Hi everyone, I'm back for another live event with Stigma-Free Society. I was also on at 2 o'clock in case you missed me, and here we are again. So just to remind you, this is a fundraiser event, so we need your support. And if you are able to donate $20 or less to our fund, our goal is $20,000, and we're just asking for $20 or less from 1,000 people to help us reach that goal, because it's really important right now during COVID-19 to support Stigma-Free Society. It's a tough time, not as many people are donating, and we just really want to put out more fantastic resources for you on our website, stigmafreetoolkit.com. So today I'm going to be talking a bit about advice for educators, maybe other school counselors or counselors in the community, and parents about maintaining wellness during COVID-19. So I'm going to start off by talking about a bit of tips for educators, followed by tips for parents, and at the very end I will talk about tips for community counselors just briefly. And then I'm here to answer your questions and see your comments. So if at any time you want to express any of your feelings or questions to me, I will get to them towards the end. So let's start with educators. So we have lots of resources for educators on our toolkit. We have blog article tips for educators that Lynsey G wrote, and it's fantastic tips that I'm going to go over with you in a moment. We also have lessons that are going to come soon for educators, practical lessons that they can take into their classrooms to help support and teach about mental health education. So let's start with those tips that Lynsey G wrote. So first of all, the Ben story and the comic. Holy moly, it's so cool. Andrea Paquette actually got an artist to draw this comic, and it's really cool. So it goes through positive and negative situations, and I really like how it helps reframe those negative thoughts during COVID-19 to positive things. So my idea for educators, and Lynsey G's idea, was why can't students create their own comic and also practice reframing their negative thoughts to positive ones? And that kind of incorporates what teachers are talking right now about, called the growth mindset. Also, it incorporates social emotional learning and language arts by them doing that writing and art. Another tip for educators, share one of our downloadable resources. One of them I actually wrote, the 10 tips for managing anxiety, and just handing those out and looking through them together as kind of a health lesson, and getting students to create their own posters about how they're going to take care of their mental and physical health. So that also would relate to coping strategies and social emotional learning. The activity generator that we have on the website. So get students to create a poster of different activities that they're doing at home to stay busy and distracted, healthy coping strategies during COVID-19. Another tip is maybe get them to watch one of our amazing, inspiring videos and inspiring stories on the website, and just getting them to write a written response on how that made them feel and just their different ideas around that. And that incorporates language arts curriculum as well. Also, another idea, why not get them to create some of their own inspiring stories? So submit a 2 to 3 minute video that they can create on the iPads, or maybe even researching a historical figure or a celebrity that has a story about mental health and putting that out there. So that would be another great way that educators can incorporate that mental health COVID education. Another just general mental health tips, because during COVID-19, we're seeing a lot more anxiety in our youth. So other tips for teachers, I think it's just important to talk openly about mental health in your classroom. Just having those important discussions, like when I spoke with Andy earlier, talking about worldwide issues, not being afraid to have those tough conversations, and do it in an engaging way. Play a short video clip so you're not just talking the whole time. My favorite is the Anna Freud Society's We All Have Mental Health video, because it covers both physical health, mental health, the differences, and hey, use the Stigma-Free video as well. And it talks about 10 different tips for mental health. You can play it for your class and have a good discussion around how to take care of yourself. Just modeling coping strategies out loud. Andy mentioned in the 2 o'clock video I posted that he uses the app Calm, and that's free for educators. So why not use these free tools in the classroom to calm down the classroom atmosphere? Another one I thought was really helpful for teachers is selecting a read aloud that your class can really relate to. A favorite one that I read during COVID-19 from our school library was Lily and Duncan, a book from Donna Gaffart. And she talks about a transgender girl and a boy in her story that has bipolar disorder. And why not make that a read aloud in the class and really spark discussion around mental health and also the LGBTQ plus community. Fabulous. All right, so I'm going to get to parents here. Parents, there's so many different ways that you can help support your child right now during COVID-19, and I'm going to share some of my favorites with you. So I know we're getting to phase 3 soon, and we're starting to adjust to this as being the new norm for a while. So it's important to keep routines consistent, especially going into summertime. So I know it's tough having a teenager at home. They always want to sleep in and do their video games and whatnot, but even just getting them to have a time that they wake up during the summer to maintain some sort of routine. So I'm not talking getting them up at 7 a.m. every morning like they did for school, but something reasonable. Maybe ask them together in a conversation, what do you think is reasonable, son or daughter, a time for you to wake up in the summertime, and kind of come to a compromise. So maybe that time is around 9 a.m., maybe it's 8 a.m., whatever is comfortable for your family, and just agree upon a wake up time and some sort of routine, even bedtimes, right? So summertime, we're doing lots of fun activities, and that's okay if we stay up a bit later here and there, but what's a general bedtime that you both can agree upon? So maybe that's 11 p.m., maybe it's 12 p.m., maybe it's even 1 a.m. sometimes when you're out camping and having fun with your kids. So just having those discussions with our children about routine and why it's important for us all, really. And incorporating exercise, some kind of exercise routine. Get their input. Hey, what do you think we can do as a family, maybe once or twice a week, to support you in your exercise routine? Would you like to go on hikes? Maybe you want to go swimming. Maybe you just want to go on walks or runs at the track. What kind of activities do you want to do as a family? And just getting that input. Another one is just focusing on the positives right now. So this is a really good opportunity to have more family time and to plan more family activities. Maybe a weekly game night, maybe a weekly hike, an adventure, a new part in BC, because as far as I know, as part of phase 3, we're going to be allowed more restrictions are loosening around traveling in BC. So maybe getting your child to think of a list, show them some pictures online of different places that we could travel around in BC, and get them to choose one that they really want to go see and kind of incorporate that as a weekly family routine. Let's go visit somewhere new and local that we haven't seen before. My favorite place is Fort Langley, and there's lots of beautiful walks around there. Another one is just modeling positive coping strategies. So deep breathing, trying new activities that involve exercise, maybe even trying a new sport like tennis. I saw people out at the park yesterday doing that. Something new and engaging, a healthy distraction coping technique. Explain the regulations of phase 3. Once all the details come out, share that with your child and let them know. Bonnie Henry says we're allowed to do this. Present the evidence. They don't need to be watching the news the whole time with you, but present the important evidence to them of what we are and are not allowed to be doing in phase 3, and then allow them space for their questions that they want to ask you about that. And any question they have is valid, and validate those feelings and questions that they have. Explain how school might be different next year. So working in a school as a school counselor, I've heard many different things of how it might look next year. And for Surrey School District, Jordan Tinney, our superintendent, has actually put out a video for parents, teachers, and school support staff around what it might look like in September. So just playing that video yourself as a parent, looking through it and just seeing if your kid has any questions. So maybe for grades 6 and 7, it might look a bit different next year. Maybe it'll be 2 days a week. And it sounds like it might be something that's going to be a bit more mandatory or expected that the child attends school. Whereas in June, our kind of trial run was optional. So just making sure you're telling your child, so it may no longer be optional. And things can change really fast in September. But here's what I know right now and what I can tell you right now about that. And then allow them to ask any questions. And there'll be smaller groups similar to what there is right now. Still have to wash your hands a lot. But you know what? It's okay. It's good for us to wash our hands anyways, right? So prevent those germs overall from colds and think of those positives. Another one I thought of to myself for anxiety is exposure therapy, which is generally used for people that have OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. So maybe just gradually exposing our children to the feared stimulus or the feared situation. Maybe right now that's high school. Maybe they're in grade 7. Maybe they're in grade 6. So if it's high school, maybe just taking them for a walk down to the high school. Hey, let's see how it looks on the outside. How is that making you feel being at the high school? How are you feeling maybe going into grade 8 next year? Or, hey, maybe the feared stimulus is going to the grocery store and your child hasn't been with you to the grocery store yet. So maybe you can do an imagined exposure with them before you go to the grocery store and think through together, how might it feel to be at the grocery store? Are there people going to be wearing masks? Are we going to have to stand a certain amount apart in line? How does that make you feel on a scale of 1 to 10? So that's generally how exposures are used. 10 being, oh my gosh, I need to get out of here. 0 being, I feel quite calm and okay with that situation. And just getting them to label how they're feeling about that feared stimulus. And yeah, just gradually, hopefully they'll start to get used to things. Overall, general anxiety for youth. I haven't done a specific talk on this yet on my live for Stigma-Free Society, so I wanted to make sure I gave you a few tips on just general anxiety in youth. So some of my favorite strategies, categories or themes. So in the moment of panic attacks or a lot of overwhelming feelings or anxiety, choose a category or a theme. Maybe it's fruits. Try and get them to think of 5 fruits that start with the letter S. So that's pretty hard. Strawberries, I can't think of many other ones right now, but it's just encouraging them to think and distract them. Another one might be hockey teams. Can you name as many hockey teams as you can think of? And just getting them to go through that. Distracting with card games or little things like that when you can. I Spy maybe for younger kids. A soft start in the morning. So that's something we do with our students as a school counselor, vice principal, principal, or childcare worker can help you with that and help your child have a softer start in the morning, whether that be in a different space than the classroom or in an office somewhere with dimmer lighting. Maybe it's having warm tea in the morning. Maybe it's playing a quick game in the morning and just allowing them to have that softer start to their day. Another one of my favorite tips is grounding. So that's the 5 senses, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding, what I can see, what I can touch, what I can hear, what I can smell, and what I can taste. Other strategies for anxiety, just reframing those negative thoughts to positive. And they can practice that with their school counselor, or we're actually coming up with a cool new CBT game that we're going to be posting on the Stigma-Free website, kind of encouraging kids and parents to discuss negative thoughts and how to turn them around to more positive thoughts and that process and how our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all connected like a triangle. So by having a positive mindset, it's going to make us feel good and it's going to make us behave well in going to school. Another one is just putting thoughts on trial. Think of it like a trial. You're the lawyer or the defense and you're presenting evidence to your child. So you want to show them all that evidence that points towards more positive thoughts. And you want to show them that their worries are still valid. However, let's focus on these positive things over here and really prove to ourselves that we can do this and we can overcome this. That even might have to do with a little bit of gratitude in the morning, thinking to ourselves, what are we grateful for every day? Just practicing that as a family, maybe in the morning, maybe around the dinner table, to just have more of those positive thoughts. Another one of my favorites is cold. Cold is really good for when we're feeling anxious or when we're feeling angry because our body gets really hot. So when our body gets hot, having a cold glass of water, even putting ice cubes in our hands, going outside for some fresh air. And it's also a DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy technique called TIP, and that's reducing the temperature in the body to make sure that we're coping within the body. All right. Last tip for you about general anxiety for me is calming scents. I really like roll-on lavender oil. That can be a lotion or some kind of scent that makes your child feel good and feel calm. A fun one I came across the other day in a video on TikTok, actually, of all things, was using sour candies like Sour Patch Kids or Warheads. And in moments of panic, taking a sour candy can help us cope because it engages our senses a lot. They also mentioned gum, chewing a bit of gum to help engage our senses of taste and just distracting ourselves from that anxiety-provoking stimulus. So some resources for you parents. For me is the toolkit, obviously, overall, stigmafreetoolkit.com. There's a special section just for parents, and we have our conversation cards there around COVID-19 that you can discuss with your child. Also, look at our blog. As I mentioned, there is tips for parents around boosting your mood on a rainy day. Tips for parents to help kids cope with increasing their bubble is one that Lynsey recently wrote in the blog. I believe it was her. Either that or Andrea Paquette, our wonderful founder. And they were really great tips there about increasing our bubble. Just general mental health resources. There's a workbook I've come across from Fear to Hope, just getting them to journal. I also posted one from my previous chats called a lockdown diary. I know we're not in lockdown anymore, but just encouraging children to write down their feelings, basically, or expressing it through art. Also, last tip, Lynsey mentioned earlier in her chat that there's going to be a new resource guide for parents, and that's going to help support parents that have a child suspected of maybe having a mental illness and different phases that you can go through as a support parent or support warrior, she calls it, which I think is really cool. And just some different steps. And I know it's hard because often with child, youth, and mental health, you get put on a big, long wait list. So to have a resource like this that Lynsey is developing is really beneficial for parents to have that kind of step-by-step guide. So look out for that real soon. All right, so other random resources I wanted to share with you from my office, because I like to show you things, as you know from my other live chats, that I use are these coping strategies. So there's 100 of them. I usually get children to highlight some of their favorites. So maybe put that in an area that children in the summertime can see it, maybe on the fridge, maybe in their room, on a bulletin board, so they can remember all those healthy coping strategies. All right, next. Another one I've done before is a paper fortune teller for anxiety, and there's different reframing tips and situations on here that children can go through. This is the CBT model, or cognitive behavioral therapy. Like I mentioned before, it's how our thoughts, behaviors, emotions, and the situations affect us and our physical reactions. Some other tips that I give kids from here are just mindfulness meditation, successive approximation. Ooh, that sounds fancy. So basically it's breaking up larger tasks into smaller steps. So chunking up work. Writing self-statements to counteract negative thoughts. Sometimes these are also called affirmations. Visualizing the best parts of the day or visualizing a peaceful place can also be really helpful, and reframing those negative thoughts. Some workbooks that I found really helpful. One in particular is the Mighty Mo story from Kelty Mental Health, and it comes along with a story and a workbook for children aged 6 to 12, and that can be helpful in processing general anxiety. Couple games for you, maybe for your family game night. There's this one called Ungame, and it's for families. There's basically just question cards, and it just gets you to talk through different situations as a family. So this is the all ages version, there's a families version, there's also a couples version, and a kids version. So it just is an encouraging conversation at home around tough issues. And I find it helpful in my counseling office as well, starting those tough conversations. All right, another one is these resilience cards I also use to help practice reframing and staying strong. And just what does resilience mean overall? So yeah, those are some of my tools that I use often in my office. Some other websites are the MAP Canada, Anxiety Canada, and they have a great program of modules for generalized anxiety. Confident Parents, Thriving Kids has a parent helpline that you can go to for support in helping your anxious child. And as I mentioned, Kelty Mental Health. So last little bit here, and then I'm going to take some of your questions because I want to hear from you. Counselors, community counselors, or school counselors like myself. Something you can be doing right now to support youth is check out our toolkit and screen share it on Zoom. Since we're going into summer, you can screen share the toolkit on Zoom and go through the different components each session and really just have a discussion around the mental health tips or the downloadable resources or the comic, because that's something that I did as a school counselor at the beginning of COVID-19, was to look through the toolkit on screen share with my students. Another tip for school counselors, let your teachers know, hey, we're going to be developing some mental health lessons for the classroom coming really soon, and you can look forward to that in September. And as I mentioned, that CBT game will be coming soon, so if you're a community counselor or a school counselor, then you can be looking forward to that to use with your students or your children. All right, so I got about 5 more minutes here and I want to hear from you. What are some of your questions? What do you want to know from me as a school counselor about anything really? Mental wellness, coping during COVID-19, anything that I've been doing with my students or that you would like suggestions of for your own children. So I know it takes a minute for questions to pop up here. Maybe you're just wondering, well, what can I be doing with my child at home to motivate them to get off their video games? So for example, for a question like that, or their electronics, I would say maybe a strategy of if, then. And as teachers and educators, they use this often as well. So if you are able to shower and get up at our usual routine time of, say, 9 a.m. and get changed and showered, then later on you can have an hour of video game time. So kind of providing that as a if-then strategy and as a reward for kids is a good way about going about that. Maybe you have a question around just friendships, just being comfortable in letting them hang around their friends right now. So just thinking that through and having that discussion before with the other parent, before arranging hangouts or play dates or whatever they call them these days, about just different safety measures. Hey, like, what do you think would be best for our kids if they're going to hang out? Maybe we should, at my house, we're doing this. We're getting our hands washed every time after we touch our face. Or maybe at our house, we're washing our hands as soon as we get in the house. So if your child comes to visit my house, that's what your child can expect for that hangout. Or I would say as parents, if your kids are getting together, perhaps a good suggestion might be to get them to play outside. Because we've learned right now during COVID-19, playing outside is definitely the safer option right now. And just having that extra space and that social distance. So if planning hangouts between your kids and other kids, just encouraging it to be outside, I think would be a good tip for parents as well. Well, I don't think I have any other questions here, so I will wrap it up and just remind you that you can donate. There is in the video description where you can donate, and we guarantee your money is going to a good place in us providing more resources for your youth on our website and just really helping our work right now and our resource support for you during this tough time. And we're asking if you could donate $20